Today, I'm back at it again with the Jones Aspinall main card builder. I think this fight is going to take place in March, and some of these predictions might fall out of line with my last video regarding predicting pay-per-views for the UFC in 2025. But I have a sneaky suspicion that they are going to stack the heck out of this Jones Aspinall card. I think Jones is all about money right now, in my opinion. I think he's satisfied with his legacy. I mean, how can he not be? Besides being a drug cheat, and I'm not gonna get into it, but I think they're gonna stack this pay per view. I think Jones wants a payday, and I think Jones will fight if the UFC gives him a large guaranteed purse. And like obviously he's gonna get a large some of the pay per views as a champion, but I think they're gonna have to stack this pay per view. And I made some banger fights. You guys are probably gonna say there's no way the UFC books all of these, but I really do think this is a possibility. So, first fight of the main card. This is gonna open up the main card with a bang. Hopefully, honestly, both of these guys deserve to be fighting down, but only one of them is gonna be fighting down because that's how rankings work. But Michel Pereira versus Paulo Costa. I know you're saying Costa's not going to take this fight, blah, 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 blah. He's going to pull out. I think this is a fight that Costa would take because I think it's a fight Costa thinks he could win. Michel Pereira got kind of exposed in his last fight, and I think Costa has the tools to beat him. I think Costa's bigger. Obviously, Michel Pereira was huge at welterweight and at middleweight. He's like average size. Costa's massive. I think we could be seeing Apollo Costa come back revival 2025. I think this is the first fight you need to do. I think this is kind of a bounce back, not a tune up, because Michel Pereira is good, but I personally would see this as Costa by KO. But I think this is the fight you start the main card with. If you see these guys opening up the main card, you're like gonna tune in. The way I built this card is I think it's 4.5 fight. I'm not gonna say 5 fights that you have to tune into. I think all 5 of these fights are just bangers. These are all fights that people are going to be like chomping at the bits to watch. So my prediction for this would be Costa by decision. I think it would go similarly to the Luke Rockhold fight in that Michel Pereira will gas out and throw some flashy kicks that will get the crowd's attention, but Costa will dominate throughout most of the fight and earn his way to a unanimous decision. Second fight of the night. This is kind of the old guard of welterweight defending his ranking against the new up-and-comer. I think you should be able to see where I'm going with this. I want to see Gilbert Burns fight Carlos Prates, and I think Prates would KO him easy. I feel bad for Gilbert Burns making this matchup, but Gilbert Burns needs to fight someone like down in the rankings. He's kind of been getting washed in his last few fights, and I do think Prates would KO him, but I don't know. I mean, it's kind of just a bad fight for Gilbert Burns if I'm being honest, but I think Gilbert Burns should retire soon, and I think this would kind of nail that in the coffin for him. And it's also an opportunity if he does beat Carlos Prates, he's right back in the mix. I think he's one fight. If he beats Carlos Prates and comes back and fights someone in the top 5 and beats them, I think there's an argument for giving him a title shot, which is crazy because considering how kind of mid Gilbert Burns has been these last couple of years. But after this next fight discounts what I said in my last video, but it's okay because if this fight got made on Jones Aspinall, this would also be a banger. I have Charles Oliveira taking on Dan Hooker on this card. Why can't I just see Charles and John Jones embracing each other on Embedded? I can see Dan Hooker taking the heel, like in the press conference. Remember that weird beef that they got into a couple years ago? Like, don't hit your family at Thanksgiving or at Christmas or whatever Dan Hooker said to John Jones. It's pretty funny. Bad, but funny. But I could just see John Jones like taking such a butthurt stance. Like, oh, I can't wait to see Charles Oliveira get a submission win. Like, he's trying to be super nice about it, but you can tell how insecure. I could just see that at the press conference. But in this fight, I think Charles would win by submission. I think Hooker, as I said in my last video, I think Hooker has the skills to drop him, and I think Hooker would drop him once, maybe. But Charles' chin has looked pretty refreshed in his last fight. But I could see Hooker dropping him once, but I do think Charles will submit him, especially if this is a 5-rounder. I think Charles has the tools. I don't know if Charles. I don't. Hooker is hard to KO. I don't know how Michael Chandler KO'd him that quickly, but I think. Oh wow! I just realized I spelled featured wrong. But I think Charles would submit Hooker in honestly round one or round two. That's my prediction. Next fight, co-main. I feel like Valentina just screams John Jones pay-per-view. It's. I feel like they they kind of enjoy putting. I feel like Valentina and Jones aren't similar eras, but they were both champ at the same time for a while. So I do think that they like putting Valentina with Jones. His fight against Cyril Gahn, she was the co-main, and it kind of lines up well for how often Valentina fights. She fights about twice a year, so I think she'll fight in March, and then I think this pay per view will be in March. I think she'll fight in March and then fight in like September or October, but this is what I think the co-main will be. I think it'll be Valentina versus Manon Fiorot, and I do think Valentina gets it done by decision. Not much to say about that. For the main event, the Holy Grail, the reason we're all here, Jones versus Aspinall. I think people are honestly writing Jones off a little bit too much, but I do think Aspinall will get it done by TKO, in round two. But I think it's going to be a closely contested fight for as long as it lasts. I think Jones will get him down once or twice, and I do think Aspinall will be honestly surprised. He'll be in the post-fight interview like, that was a tough run, Rogan. Jones is a great fighter. I'd love to fight him again. But like we all know, Jones will retire after that fight and just be butthurt for the rest of his life about losing to Aspinall. But I do think that Aspinall will KO him eventually. I think Aspinall's just Jones struggles with people who are similar in height to him, and Aspinall's big. Aspinall's huge. Jones hasn't fought a real heavyweight fighter who cuts down to 265ers around that range yet, and I think he would struggle with someone who weighs like at light heavyweight. He was bigger than most of these guys, and the guys who were similar to him, he struggled. Like Dominic Reyes, Thiago Santos, guys like that who he was similar. Like a lot of Jones's career wins were Chael Sonnen, Rashad Evans. Like those are good fighters, but come on, you're fighting John Jones. But like, I'm not saying Dominic Reyes is better than those guys, but he's bigger, and that's what Jones struggles with. But I do think Aspinall, I do think Jones will do better than people think, but I think Aspinall gets it done. So that's my Jones Aspinall card builder. Let me know what you think. Critique me in the comments. Say, oh, it's too stacked. This will never happen. Just critique me. Just